feature presentation.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming onto the show and talking about universal language. I wanted to start with all of you, Ila, Pirouz, and Matthew, and talk about what does this experience mean to you, is specifically having the chance to not only make the movie together, but to talk about it with press and audiences and promoters alike.
Yeah, the talking has I mean it's been a lot. We were saying last night that our souls have kind of left our bodies, but the bodies continue doing Q&As, just ad infinitum. But it's nice to talk. I mean, it's always great when we get to talk about, I don't know, new stuff. Some of our questions, or some of our answers, we have to remove them from the lounge act. We just can't tell the same stories again.
Do you feel almost like you've created like a comedy routine, or a way like a stand-up routine where the comedian would go on to like talk show and kind of like train their stand-up bits at this point?
It is like that. We have a lot of material, but some of it, it's like we have to retire this. It's like I can't tell that story again, But
well, I know you've been talking a lot about that too. So sorry, Ila, I didn't mean to.
Right, no, I mean, sometimes now we're playing even around this. For example, Matthew has his own story from his childhood, but Pirouz telling as Matthew. So we try, and it's going more and more absurd and in the interview. So, but for us, it's maybe a little bit more fun. These things like
we try to have fun.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Pirouz, I was going to ask you, because you first worked on this project with Matthew 13 years ago, back in 2012. Did those initial chats from the initial concept of the idea, did any of that make it into the final film? Because Matthew, you've also talked in interviews about how the script was changing even as you were shooting the film. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, this was 12 years ago, I think. But I mean, the main elements that were in the script are still there. It's same story, and it kind of just developed over time. So yeah, and as you heard, a lot of it was kind of as we went along in our conversations, and then we threw the script away and we just shot with the actors and how they wanted to express themselves, and so yeah, it all.
I mean, a lot of it was, there was a lot of room for action reaction too. Like one line that always gets a big laugh was something that Pirouz came up with just while we were in Portage Place shopping mall in Winnipeg. And this was just sort of Pirouz's natural response to the place, which you had very little encounter of. In fact, I think when we shot there, it was the second time you had visited it. I of course, had spent my childhood there and stuff. And there's a clock in the center court of the mall, and it's been broken for decades. And I had this idea that the clock we would remove the hands from the clock. It would just be like, it wouldn't even tell time at all. And so Pirouz came up with this idea that one of the tourists asks, why does the clock have no hands? And he answers, Portage Place is timeless. And it's not true. Yeah. But that line always gets a big laugh, and that was just Pirouz responding naturally to the absurdity of that place. So a lot of the script was kind of like that. It was,
Also the 3D cinema, which was closed. We saw the carcass of this 3D cinema, and well, it doesn't run anymore. And so that became another point of references. Why is there no more 3D films?
actually, it's funny because some of the parts was exactly like art specific installation. You go just to the place, and place gives you a lot of idea, and then you tell to the actors, just do this. Not like a very.
Well, it seems like such an immersive experience. And Ila, I wanted to ask you, when did you join the project in the writing phase, and how quickly did you feel integrated into that process?
I would say 100 years ago in my dreams. I know. I mean, I met Matthew by Pirouz like 12 years ago, and we had a small encounter. But I didn't live that much in the country, right and on and off between Iran and Montreal. And then later I came back and we just talked. Matthew and Pirouz talked about me about this project, and I was just surprised. I said, "Imagine a movie in Winnipeg, people talking in Farsi. Where is it? What is it? How come? Who gonna be that in this movie?" So then we involved in the conversation and with our friends and talk with them, and so everybody to get involved more and more. Yeah, now we are here, and I don't know if we're dreaming or is reality. We just
Yeah, the majority of the work, I mean, it's really started after the pandemic,
Yeah.
and this is when Ila came back from Iran, and we were all together, and then I left to Iran and came back. So we had this, the pandemic kind of became this thing that we knew we wanted to do this. It was time, but it also allowed this space for us to really be together and really think and come together. It was the first time for, I think, everyone who was involved in this film, kind of a post-pandemic, that you kind of come to create a community for the first time after all this distance and solitude. So it really became like this kind of we were holding each other and kind of coming out of that. And we really, I mean, it's since then it's become like we're like a family now. We've become very close friends. It's crazy. Like and people feel that by just watching the film, and people who've seen us in festivals, and they're like, "Wow, you guys really feel like you're, friends." And we're like, "Yeah, this was the experience of making this film. This was what inspired this film, and that's what people are feeling from."
Yeah, in the name of friendship, and how the movie starts as well, and also paying tribute to Iranian cinema. And I was curious because you're mentioning the pandemic as well, and I feel like we took social interactions and friendships maybe for granted, being secluded for so long. Do you guys consider this film to be a radical presentation, in the sense of how a movie like this is very, Matthew, you've talked about it being very gentle. And that's something that a lot of people don't have right now, or feel like, it's very trying times. But do you believe that this is a film that is radical for its presentation of being gentle and kind and very emotional in the third act specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. We didn't set out to make a political movie. I mean, what Pirouz just said is really the truth. I mean, I've been thinking, someone asked last night about the tone of the movie and, the humor in the movie. And that's really just a very direct expression of just how we are together. I mean, it's just a lot of the movie was sort of coming up with ideas that appealed to our humor and our idealism also. And it's a very direct expression of that. We didn't really think about it in any kind of political way at all. But yes, I think it's true that probably something that was working upon us, and something that has really come into vivid clarity in the years since the pandemic, is just the degree to which the solitude of that time has really metastasized into something really pathological. It's like it's the world has become very rigid and cruel and binary and mean, and all manner of Berlin walls are shooting up around us every day. And so in that context, a movie that is really not structured around conflict. I mean, there's no oppositional paradigms in the movie. There's some like angry characters, but they're really there for comic effect. But the story itself is really just a long collection of people being nice to each other. And that I think, we didn't think of it at the time, but I think that might be a radical act in the current political context.
Absolutely. I'm curious because you were talking about the writing process before and the lines that make people laugh. Matthew, you also mentioned that you're not a competitive person, especially with, the award season and how it went. But I'm curious to ask if the three of you ever felt competitive with each other to make each other laugh in terms of developing lines or crafting a scene. And was there anything that really stood out to you that really got you in a way that you were like, how do I get this? How do I get my fellow writer back? Because this was so funny or hard to top.
I don't think so.
Really?
No. No, not really, you know. Even between us, for sure, no. Even further, neither, you know, with other people as well. Imagine if we're not competitive with other people. Of course, between us, even like a positive things that you said about jokes, we weren't. We of course we wanted to impress each other from there for the jokes for sure. And as Matthew said, always, for example, he's thinking about one joke or something the night in his house and just texts me and Pirouz, and he knew that we're gonna laugh to die, you know, or vice versa. So I mean, it was really all the time was dialogue, you know, and yeah.
Yeah, I always had the feeling that if a funny idea came to me, it was, even if I was alone in a room, I always had the impression that it was Ila and Pirouz who somehow put that, you know, just filled that synapse with electricity in my brain. You know what I mean? And the thought wouldn't occur to me were it not for them. You know what I mean? And I feel like it was really like that. Some of these things we sort of figured out together, and sometimes we figured them out separately, but always somehow we were kind of all involved.
Yeah.
You know, it was
There were
like,
many moments I felt like the three of us would suddenly get this, like we would have the same idea at the same time, and it was so beautiful when it happened, and it like gave us so much energy to be on the same wavelength, and
It's more and more going absurd. We're becoming one person, you know.
A collective, you know, like a team that way. I was curious about that because that's another thing that I know a lot of people talk about, especially in this day and age, and it's nothing new per se. But do you think the auteur theory has done more harm to films in general, or it's even talking about this? People will say it's Matthew Rankin's universal language and not a collective group effort. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on the auteur theory.
yeah, I mean, I've always, that's the thing. I've always tried to, reposition the film not in that way. People do that, and I always, as much as possible, I try to correct it because I don't really like it. I don't really think that, a film by one person, that never is the truth. There are all manner of film bros in Napoleon hats who believe that that's what they're doing. But they're kidding themselves. They're really not. No film is made that way. And I'm sure that anybody who works with a film bro in a Napoleon hat probably has a miserable time. But for me, the fun of making a film is the collective experience of it. That it is a collective art form. It is, and the director is the point of synthesis. You need a point of synthesis, absolutely, for sure. But that doesn't mean that the film is made by one person. Not at all. It could be a very, very personal film. I mean, a lot about in this movie is, I put a lot of my own personal feelings on display in a very vulnerable way in this movie, but I'm not telling that story by myself in my hermetically sealed Tupperware container. I'm telling that story with my friends. We're telling it together, and it becomes our story. And that's the beauty of making a film. And I always like to say that the way a film should work is you think of it as a brain, and the brain is full of everybody. And when you calibrate that brain really well, and people have something to say each person has something to say that's personal for them through the prism of the movie that we're making together, then the thing really comes to life. That's when it really becomes a living organism. And so you want that brain to be really intelligent, and it should be more intelligent than each individual person, and that's how we feel about it. We feel like it's the brain that made the movie, and we are there to serve the brain. It's bigger than us.
And in a way, I think that reflects kind of a lot of things in how society is run. We like to just point at one person, one president or prime minister. This is the person, and we're all like put everything on them. But really, it's a community, and everyone is doing it together. So again, this is our radical act in a way in this kind of this patriarchal kind of pyramid system that we're trying to break down and create like a circle of
yeah, it's like a circle. Exactly.
Did you feel that all three of you could be vulnerable with each other and talking about how you felt? I mean, specifically, I know, like Matthew, you've been very open about, the passing of your mother and how that affected you, and I'm so sorry for your loss. Is that something where it's like it's easier to work with somebody else and talk to somebody else and have that catharsis with friends in a support system that you can have those open conversations with?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer. We should always make films with our friends. It's an intimate thing to make a film, no matter what kind of film you're making, and it's not a transactional undertaking. It's a spiritual thing to do. And so I love to work with people that I feel very close to and very connected with. And yeah, I mean, I've spent more time with Ila and Pirouz than in my life than I've spent with my own brother. So these are deep family bonds, and I feel like, that's actually what, sort of why the film works. It's because we can go deep together.
We can be vulnerable together.
Yeah.
Yeah, for example, that's like, I can give you an example. The last scene, Matthew with his mother, that was for us, for all of us, for everybody who that day was on the set, was very, very emotional, and we were all complete in silence, just nothing, just he was playing, and we were all in a very quiet and silent situation, and it was very, very emotional because we knew his loss, we knew his sorrow, and we all felt it, not just Pirouz and I, the whole friends that were on the set, Isabel, Luisa, Pablo, Armin, whoever was working on, they were in quiet mode and just feeling the very, very profound emotion. So I think for us was something that Matthew put, of course, is, as you say, vulnerability inside it, but everyone directly felt it and worked on it, but with the real emotions. So it was like a very, very real scene for all of us.
You feel that too.
Yeah.
You feel it while you're watching in the movie in that last act. And like what I really appreciate about the movie as well is that it uses sound design and not always score to, indicate what's going on in the scene. And obviously there's a feeling of like, this represents seasonal depression in a way that I've never seen on screen, but it also feels very kind and warm and can do both in a way that is very hard to pull off. And that in itself is incredible. And I know we were talking, about something really serious there, and I really appreciate that. But I also have to ask, Rod Peeler, the realtor, how did that come to be? And up until rewatching the movie again, I thought that was a figment of your guys' imagination.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a good story. Yes, it's Rod Peeler does exist. He's beloved, one of Winnipeg's most beloved real estate agents. He does have a side hustle as a Rod Stewart impersonator, and as you can see, he sort of styles himself in that way. And yes, his catchphrase is "I never sleep," which has those sort of I mean, there's a little bit of an echo of the Farsi greeting "Khasti nabashi" in that, right? I mean, that's a strange kind of echo of that in there, but
And everywhere it's gone, like people really react to Rod Peeler.
yeah,
Like it's
that's right. I mean, I was working on the storyboard one night, and I thought it would be great to have a Rod Peeler bench. His benches are all over Winnipeg. Winnipeggers know who that is. And I thought I should have a Rod Peeler "I never sleep" bench in this shot, and so I emailed Rod Peeler just spontaneously, and I didn't realize it was 3:00 in the morning, and he answered immediately, like within seconds. I had a reply and was like, "Yes, anything you need." And so he really doesn't ever sleep. He is as advertised. But what is kind of amazing about that is that he's bizarrely he has. I thought that was just going to be something that would make little narcotic synapses burst in the Winnipeg mind. I thought only Winnipeggers will get that. And the scene itself doesn't hinge on the Rod Peeler bench at all. You know what I mean? Like, the scene is about something else. It's just there, the bench. He sits on it. And I just thought that'd be a little joke for Winnipeggers. But weirdly, we've sort of shown it around, and some people just like flip out at the sight of that bench. It's so funny to them.
It's amazing because there's part of it as well that is so universal in that presentation, because I think about this movie all the time traveling to Toronto from Whitby, because there's a realtor that's very similar in terms of the look, and his name is Dan Plowman, and it just is so close to it. And so every time I think about it, there's this warm feeling of referencing universal language. So I think it does speak to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it is amazing. I was curious though as well, did you modify the ad for the movie in any way, or was it just already something that you just picked up that was made?
No, it's pretty much exactly like that. I mean, it's in Farsi, of course, but yeah, it's really, it's the same as what's written. Yeah, exactly. It says, Rod Peeler, I never sleep. Do you need help? Which is what he writes on his own benches. Yeah.
Wow. I really wish he can go and watch the movie.
Yeah.
Do you think he's seen it, or you think he will see it?
I wonder. Yeah, we should have reached out to him.
Yeah.
He was really enthusiastic when I emailed him. I'm sure he'll be delighted to get a little boost in,
Yeah. That's
in reading.
great.
Yeah,
We need to do this now. Like, I'm sure, like, if you sent him an email now, he'd respond right away.
he would. He would be on this call. He should be on it. It's true.
I'm also curious about Tim Hortons. If did they have any response to the film, or what you were making, or including them in the movie in any way?
We met. I met this one Iranian lady who told me her friend had owns like 3 Tim Hortons in Calgary, and that person loved it, and wanted to, and found one. We had a few little Farsi language Tim Hortons cups, and she wanted to get some of those. Like, she was really excited about. But I don't know. We didn't speak with Tim himself or anything.
Darn.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been great. But it's one of those things. Like, I mean, it's the movie is sort of drawing. I mean, a lot of it is sort of stuff that is. I mean, a lot of the humor in the movie is sort of the humor that kind of emerges from things that are both banal and kind of sublime at the same time. And Tim Hortons is kind of like that, right? I mean, and it's also part of the natural universe. I mean, Tim Hortons is so omnipresent. I mean, Tim might as well be a tree or a shrub at this point. I mean, everywhere you look, he's there, So this is art that, this is what art has to do. It has to comment on the natural world, right? So
Absolutely. And that's also, I have to wrap with you, but it did remind me a little bit, obviously, of the late David Lynch, in the way that he found beauty in the industrial and in factories, in the way that you find beauty in beige and gray, and can observe it in a way that you haven't seen it before. And what I really appreciate about this movie, and I think anybody that watches it, you take elements that we've seen before, whether it be in Persian cinema, Canadian cinema, even a little bit of Roy Anderson and Quebecois, but you put it together, all three of you, and you've made something so unique and special. And I think that this is something that, for generations down the line, people will look at this and say, I didn't know you could do something like this. And that's the thing that excites me so much as someone that loves film, but also it's just really funny and warm. And so thank you so much to all of you for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice to chat with you.
Yeah. A lot of people have also responded. They kind of tell us, we wish Tim Hortons looked like that. So this is like there's a big movement behind that now.
I mean, let's start it now. The campaign begins here,
In Calgary, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. And I hope you have a great rest of your tour of Pirouz. I know that you were going to do something in Vancouver or something soon. So yeah.
It continues.
Yes.
Yes.
Onward we schlep with this dogged bunch.
Well, on that note, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, sir. Lovely to chat, man.